Good afternoon. It's Monday, August 3rd. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting from Jerusalem. The funeral for Shira Banki, the 16-year-old girl who died last night after fighting for her life since she was stabbed in Thursday's attack at the Jerusalem Gay Pride Parade, will take place today at 6:30 at Kibbutz Nachshon in the Mate Yehuda Regional Council. IBA's Eli Wogelanter has that story.
16-year-old Shira Banki, who was critically wounded after being stabbed by a Jewish terrorist during the Jerusalem Pride Parade on Thursday, succumbed to her wounds last night after a three-day battle for her life. Banki, who had been hospitalized at Hadassah Ein Kerem Hospital, had been on a respirator and sedated as doctors fought for her life. Her family announced that they will donate Shira's organs and issued a statement saying, "For no good reason and because of evil, stupidity, and negligence, the life of our beautiful flower was cut short. Bad things happen to good people, and a very bad thing happened to our amazing girl." The statement also expressed hope for less hatred and more tolerance. Shortly after the announcement that she died, Banki's friends and schoolmates started flocking to her Jerusalem high school to pay their final respects and renounce violence.
I'm not optimistic. I'm not optimistic, not about what's gonna come. The gay communities in Jerusalem and in Israel is painful, and it harmed, and it was stabbed so hard that I don't know how we will get up from this, but we have to keep fighting. We have to keep fighting and do everything and put all our energy to keep fighting for her and for everybody who was murdered for these causes.
One of Banki's teachers said that the school was prepared to provide support and help students fight for their rights.
Our students are not so naive. They know there are monsters in the world, and they know how to fight them. And this is our task now as teachers, friends, and their task as students to continue the war in all those monsters who try to prevent us from living our life.
Spontaneous rallies were also held in Banki's memory in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv last night, with several hundred people holding a candlelight vigil in Zion Square in downtown Jerusalem. The stabbing has shocked Israel and drew condemnations from across the political spectrum. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a statement after sending his condolences to the family, saying Shira was murdered because she bravely supported the principle that everyone has the right to live their lives respectfully and with security. We will not permit the terrible murderer to challenge the basic values on which Israeli society is built. We reject with disgust any attempt to impose hatred and violence among us and will bring the murderer to justice. Education Minister Naftali Bennett, head of Bayit Yehudi, said Banki was murdered due to extremism because we don't know how to accept the other. And he added, students in Israel need first of all to know, don't be afraid to be who you are and what you are. The perpetrator, Yishai Schlissel from Modi'in Elite, remains in police custody after it was determined on Friday that he is psychologically fit to stand trial. Schlissel had been released from prison 3 weeks earlier after serving 10 years for a similar attack at Jerusalem's 2005 Gay Pride Parade. Police have come under criticism for not keeping him under tighter surveillance. Eli Wogelanter, IBA News.
In an effort to help law enforcement officials catch the Jewish terrorist who killed Palestinian toddler Ali Dawabsha in Duma last week, the Security Cabinet has authorized the use of administrative detention against far-right Jewish suspects. The Security Cabinet said it viewed the arson as a terrorist attack in every respect. It directed the security services to take all necessary steps to find those responsible for the assault and to prevent similar attacks, including the use of administrative detention, which allows law enforcement officials to detain suspects indefinitely without a trial or access to an attorney. The process is typically used against Palestinians in Judea and Samaria who are suspected of involvement in terrorism. The Security Cabinet also established a ministerial committee chaired by Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon that is to take additional measures to combat hate crimes and terrorist attacks. Committee members will include Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan and Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked. The order came as the security forces, led by the Shin Bet, continues to conduct an intensive manhunt for the Duma arsonists. Authorities have begun investigating death threats that were made against President Reuven Rivlin in response to his sharp condemnation of the Duma firebombing, as well as remarks he made at a rally Saturday night defending the rights of the LGBT community. Sources close to the president filed a complaint with police requesting that they further examine vindictive remarks that were posted on social media, including a photo depicting Rivlin as an Arab wearing the traditional keffiyeh head covering. While visiting the wounded from the attack in the Palestinian village on Friday, Rivlin said he felt ashamed that the perpetrators came from his own people, adding that Israeli authorities were lax in confronting Jewish terrorism. His remarks drew immediate reaction from several people on Facebook who expressed hope that he be assassinated and warned that Rivlin will end up like former Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, who was in a coma for 8 years after suffering a stroke while serving as Prime Minister. A Palestinian man was lightly injured this morning after he was shot in the leg by border police officers who tried to inspect him near the Tappuach Junction in the West Bank. The officers warned the man to stop, but he continued to run and they opened fire. The Hamas television channel is reporting that the Palestinian was seriously injured. In a separate incident, soldiers today found an axe in the backseat of a Palestinian car that was traveling along the Trans-Samaria highway. The driver was held for questioning and insisted he kept the axe for self-defense. Some 150 Israelis gathered together with rabbis, sheikhs, and Palestinian peace activists to the entrance to the Shalom Alon Shvut settlement in Gush Katif to unite against violence and condemn the murder of Ali Dawabsha, the Palestinian toddler who was burnt to death in the village of Duma Friday morning. The gathering, which was organized by Shorashim, a joint Israeli-Palestinian coexistence organization, also prayed for the recovery of the Dawabsha family members who remain in hospital with severe injuries sustained in the arson attack. All of the speakers denounced violence, deplored the use of God's name to justify murder, and called for the perpetrators of the attack to be brought to justice. Rabbanit Chadash Froman, the wife of the late rabbi and coexistence advocate Menachem Froman, said she was at the event to continue her husband's path. She said it is a very important mission to save lives and honor all people and to shout and demand that all senseless killing stops. One of the participants explained why the event was important.
My name is Yaakov Nagen. I'm a rabbi at the Yeshiva of Otniel, which is south of Hebron. And we're here as an outcry against a brutal murder of a innocent child, which is the antithesis of what we believe in the sanctity of human life. And what gives us hope today is that in this prayer today, together with the Jews, we will have some Muslims also joining us, praying together, both for the victims, for those who are still in the hospitals.
At this moment, firefighters are battling brush fires at a number of places in Judea and Samaria, including along Highway 90 in the Jordan Valley and near El-Azhar in the Etzion block. Meanwhile, residents of Even Sapir were allowed to return to their homes after firefighters were able to contain the major forest fire that swept through their moshav. IBA's Ari O'Sullivan brings us more in this report.
It was a vicious fire with at least 50 teams working to fight the flames at Even Sapir in the woody outskirts of Jerusalem for hours on this hottest day of the year. The choking smoke and heat engulfed the moshav. At least 13 aircraft also participated in the effort. Firefighters believe they have a serial arsonist on their hands since there have been a number of fires started near here every day and night during this dry period. At one point, the police didn't take any chances and ordered residents to evacuate. Some 700 people were forced from their homes, taking with them their most precious possessions after their children, their dogs and cats. Some people tried to stop the flames with their garden hoses, but in vain. A number of chicken coops burned, with live chickens inside. For a moment, there were fears that the fire would reach nearby Hadassah Hospital in En Kerem, as well as other moshavim in the area. But in the end, the firefighters prevented the blaze from spreading. Teams came from as far away as Haifa and the Galilee to fight the fire. A total of 300 dunams went up in flames, as did several storehouses and some homes. Residents were allowed to return to the moshav this morning, but they still don't have electricity. So far, there have been no reports of any injuries. Ari O'Sullivan for IBA News.
The Federation of Local Authorities, along with the Parents' Committees Association, are preparing to hold a strike to prevent the opening of the upcoming school year on September 1st. This in protest against the overcrowding in classrooms and what they claim are expected budget cuts that the Treasury is intending to make in the education and welfare ministries. The head of the Local Authorities Union, Chaim Bivas, sent Prime Minister Netanyahu a letter demanding that he intervene in the crisis. Last month, parents held dozens of demonstrations dubbed the sardine protests across the country against overcrowded classrooms, which they say have ballooned to 40 children or more in some cases. The Parents' Committee is warning that if the number of students in each class is not kept to 32 or less, they will go ahead with the strike in September. Workers at the Ashdod port were evacuated this morning after radioactive material was discovered to have been emanating from one of the shipping containers. Fire and rescue services, along with special crews examining hazardous materials, performed checks in the area. Officials from the Environmental Protection Ministry issued a statement stressing that the container, which is suspected to have come off a Chinese ship, posed no threat to the general public. The container was transferred to an isolated area at the port. Well, day one of the Tel Aviv light rail project, which was launched at midnight, went by smoother than expected. The massive traffic congestion that was expected due to the closing of many streets was surprisingly less felt this morning. However, don't be fooled. Local traffic experts said this wasn't an indication of things to come and attributed the relative calm primarily to the summer, saying that heavy traffic is usually down by 30% during the months of July and August because of many people on summer vacation. The havoc due to the Tel Aviv Light Railway project, which is expected to take 6 years to complete, is likely to be felt more so in the coming days when the prominent Mariv Bridge will be destroyed, disabling the easy commute from the city's east to west sides. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has brought the Obama administration's case for the Iran nuclear deal to skeptical Arab officials in Qatar. His meeting today in Doha with the foreign ministers of the Gulf Cooperation Council, the 6-member bloc of Sunni-ruled Gulf Arab nations that fear Shiite Iran's increasing assertiveness in the region and the implications of the agreement. In addition to Iran, the ongoing conflicts in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen were expected to be high on the agenda. Kerry's talks today follow a May meeting that U.S. President Barack Obama hosted for Arab leaders at Camp David. At that meeting, Obama promised them enhanced security cooperation and expedited defense sales to guard against a potential Iranian threat. Kerry, who arrived from Cairo, has acknowledged concerns about Iran's behavior in the Middle East, but defended the nuclear deal as the best way to combat it.
Let me be very clear. The United States has labeled Iran the #1 state sponsor of terror in the world. And the United States has taken steps over the course of the last years to try to deal with the reality of the destabilizing choices that have been made. But I have one simple fact to put in front of everybody. If Iran is destabilizing, it is far, far better to have an Iran that doesn't have a nuclear weapon than one that does. So I am absolutely convinced that Egypt, Israel, the Gulf states, every country in the region is safer with 1 year breakout for 10 years than 2 months, and safer with inspections, and safer with reductions of the stockpile, and safer with an adopted process under the NPT that Iran has to live by for the lifetime of this agreement.
Staying with the Iran nuclear deal, and congressional Democrats are increasingly confident that they will have the 1/3 votes necessary in either chamber to counter any attempt to overturn a presidential veto. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said more and more Democrats have confirmed to her that they will vote for the deal. Republicans in Congress are expected to push through a vote disapproving of the deal, but in order to override a veto, they will need the support of at least 44 Democratic House representatives and 13 in the Senate. Following U.S. President Barack Obama's intensive lobbying at the White House this past week, a handful of key Democrats have stepped forward to support the accord. Other Democrats have signaled they are leaning in favor, and still others have remained undeclared, awaiting a vote in September. Several Democrats said Obama's detailed understanding of the accord won their respect. Meanwhile, in Tehran, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said his country achieved its main goals in the nuclear deal. In a national address last night, Rouhani said the accord recognizes Iran's right to enrich uranium and lifts international sanctions. He insisted that Iran's missile program will not be threatened by the deal because UN resolutions only prevent missiles that are designed to carry nuclear heads, and Tehran has never had this kind of design and has no intention to obtain nuclear weapons. In local money matters, the shekel strengthened in foreign currency trading, while shares were up on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Here's a look at the late afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather, and the sizzling heat wave that continued today caused Israelis around the country to break all-time power usage records for the second day in a row. The Israel Electric Corporation is warning that if the peak consumption continues to climb to a chart-topping 13,300 megawatts or more, the system could experience power shortages due to a low electricity reserve, which currently only has 600 megawatts left. The IEC said it will provide updates about any changes or developments. The electric company will still have a hard time keeping up with demand because the extreme heat wave is expected to continue. Here's a look at the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. Well, if you think we have it bad, well, take a look at our neighbors across the border in Amman, where the extremely hot weather has been accompanied by massive sandstorms that have severely disrupted visibility and made going outside very uncomfortable. The sandstorm also forced many flights to be diverted, with some planes landing at other airports in the region, including at Ben Gurion International Airport. And thanks for being with us this evening. I hope you join us again tomorrow at the same time for all the latest breaking news from Israel. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a cool evening, and shalom from Jerusalem.